Hey everyone! Tonight we're traveling back over 500 years to Renaissance Florence, sometime around the year 1475. The dawn hasn't quite broken over the terracotta rooftops yet, and most of the city still sleeps beneath wool blankets and linen sheets. But you won't be sleeping. You're about to spend an entire day as a baker, one of the thousands of skilled tradesmen who belong to Florence's powerful guild system. This won't be a stroll through Renaissance art galleries. This will be flour dust in your lungs, the blistering heat of a wood-fired oven against your face, and hands worked raw from kneading dough before the sun even considers rising. Before we begin, if you enjoy these deep dives into history and find yourself drifting off to this kind of content, go ahead and like the video, subscribe if you want more journeys like this. And hey, drop your city and the time you're watching in the comments. Now settle in. Maybe adjust your pillow, dim those lights. We're about to step into a world where bread wasn't just food but the very foundation of survival, where your livelihood depended on guild membership, and where the smell of baking loaves mingled with the creative genius that would define an entire era of human achievement. The night air carries a chill that October mornings bring to Florence, even in the temperate Tuscan valley. It's somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, and the darkness outside your modest two-room dwelling sits heavy and complete. No street lamps illuminate the narrow Via dei Fornai, the street of bakers, where your home squeezes between similar stone and timber structures. The buildings lean toward each other across the cramped alley like old friends sharing secrets, their upper stories jutting out so close that neighbors could almost shake hands from opposite windows. You wake without needing any rooster or church bell. After 15 years working as a master baker, your body knows the rhythm as intimately as your own heartbeat. Your wife, Caterina, stirs slightly beside you but doesn't wake. She's learned to sleep through your pre-dawn departures. The straw mattress rustles beneath you as you swing your legs onto the cold stone floor, and you pause for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the absolute blackness of the room. From the smaller room, beyond the curtain that serves as a door, you can hear the soft breathing of your 3 children, all bundled together on their shared mattress. Your eldest, Paolo, is 10 now, and will join you at the bakery in another year or two to begin his apprenticeship in earnest, though he already helps on busy days. The 2 younger ones, Maria and little Giovanni, are still too small for the grueling work that baking demands. You dress by feel and long habit, the coarse linen shirt first, then the wool tunic that's been patched so many times you've lost count. The tunic is stained with flour that no amount of washing can fully remove. Honestly, you stopped trying years ago. Every baker in Florence wears the same permanent dusting, a badge of the trade as recognizable as the bright scarlet worn by the judges or the deep blue of the silk merchants. Thick wool hose go on next, though they're thin in places from wear. Your shoes are sturdy leather, resoled twice already, and absolutely essential. You'll be on your feet for the next 12 to 14 hours, and cheap footwear means suffering that makes the day interminable. Before leaving, you kneel briefly at the small household altar tucked into a niche in the wall. A simple wooden cross hangs there, flanked by a tiny oil lamp that burns perpetually. You cross yourself and murmur a brief prayer to Saint Honoratus, the patron saint of bakers, asking for his intercession to keep the ovens burning true and the dough rising properly, then a prayer for your family's health and prosperity. In a world where plague can return without warning and where guild regulations can make or break a family's fortune, you take no chances with divine favor. Caterina has left a small piece of yesterday's bread and a wedge of pecorino cheese on the table, along with a small flask of watered wine. You eat quickly, mechanically, your mind already running through the day's tasks. The starter dough from yesterday will need checking. The oven must be fired at least 2 hours before the first loaves go in. possibly longer if the autumn dampness has gotten into the wood. You have a special order from the Tornabuoni household, one of the city's wealthiest families, allied with the Medici 20 extra loaves of the finest white bread, the kind made from flour sifted 3 times to remove every speck of bran. That alone will require careful attention. You lift the heavy leather satchel that contains your guild documents, always kept close. Inside are the papers that prove your status as a master baker in the Arte dei Fornai, the Bakers' Guild, one of the 14 minor guilds that nonetheless wield considerable power in Florence's complex political structure. Without these papers, you couldn't legally operate your bakery. Without guild membership, you'd be just another struggling day laborer, probably working in the wool industry alongside thousands of others, subject to harsh discipline and uncertain wages. The door creaks as you pull it open, and the October cold hits you immediately. The narrow street is utterly dark except for a faint glimmer from a shuttered window 2 houses down, where old Tommaso, the cobbler, keeps a lamp burning all night. Some say he's afraid of the dark. Others whisper about protective vigils against evil spirits. You don't judge. Everyone has their superstitions, and in an age where so much remains mysterious and frightening, who can say what works and what doesn't? Your feet know these streets intimately. You've walked this route 6 days a week for over a decade, barring Sundays and the feast days that punctuate the calendar. The Via dei Fornai connects to the Via dell'Acqua, which winds its way past the Church of Santa Felicita, and eventually to your bakery near the Ponte Vecchio. Florence isn't a huge city like Paris or Milan. Around 70,000 souls call it home these days, down from the peak of nearly 100,000 before the Black Death's devastating visitations. But those 70,000 souls consume a tremendous amount of bread every single day, and the 100 or so bakers in the city work ceaselessly to provide it. As you walk, the darkness begins to show the faintest softening toward the east, beyond the hills where the sun will eventually rise. The stars overhead are brilliant, cold points of light that seem close enough to touch. You pass the workshop of Marco the blacksmith, already hearing the faint sounds of his apprentice stoking the forge. Smiths and bakers share similar schedules, both trades requiring early starts to heat their respective furnaces. A cat darts across your path, and you catch the movement more than see it. The city is full of cats, necessary predators keeping the rat population in some kind of check. Rats are the bane of any baker's existence, drawn irresistibly to grain stores. Your bakery has 3 cats, vicious hunters that sleep during the day and patrol the storage room at night. You feed them just enough to keep them loyal, but not so much that they lose interest in hunting. You turn onto a slightly wider street, and here you encounter another early riser. It's Alessandro, one of your fellow bakers, heading toward his own establishment 3 streets over. You exchange brief greetings, just a raised hand and a muttered good morning. There's no time for conversation, and besides, the hour discourages unnecessary talk. Alessandro is technically a competitor, but the Bakers' Guild maintains enough regulation that there's little point in cutthroat rivalry. Prices are fixed by guild statute. Quality is strictly monitored by guild inspectors who can levy heavy fines or even revoke licenses for inferior bread. Territory is generally respected. Your success or failure depends more on consistency, reputation, and maintaining good relationships with steady customers than on undercutting or outmaneuvering other bakers. The Arno River comes into view, a dark ribbon cutting through the heart of Florence. The Ponte Vecchio spans it, the old bridge lined with shops that will be shuttered at this hour. During the day, goldsmiths and butchers conduct business there, the bridge a small city unto itself. Now it's just a convenient crossing point. Your bakery sits 2 buildings away from the bridge's southern end, a location your father secured decades ago, and that you inherited upon his death 8 years back. As you approach, you can already smell the faint, lingering scent of yesterday's baking, a ghostly reminder that clings to the building's stones. The bakery occupies the ground floor, while you rent out the 2 rooms above to a young notary and his wife. Supplementing your income, The notary pays his rent on time and rarely complains about being awakened at odd hours by the sounds of baking, so you consider yourself fortunate. You fish the heavy iron key from your satchel and unlock the thick wooden door. The hinges are well oiled, a lesson learned after a visiting guild inspector once commented on squeaking hinges being a sign of general neglect. In the guild system, appearances matter enormously. Everything signals something about your diligence, your prosperity, your fitness to practice your trade. Inside, the darkness is absolute. You navigate by memory to where the tinderbox sits on a shelf, and you carefully work to create a spark. It takes several strikes of the flint, but eventually, you coax a tiny flame to life on the charcloth. This you transfer to a twisted bit of oiled rag, which catches and allows you to light the oil lamp hanging from a hook. Warm yellow light spills out, pushing back the shadows and revealing the familiar space of your bakery. The front room is where customers will be served in a few hours. A wooden counter separates the public area from the work area. Shelves line the walls, waiting to be filled with the day's bread. A small religious painting hangs in one corner. Saint Honoratus with his baker's peel, a tool you've used so often it feels like an extension of your own arms. The painting was a gift from your wife's family when you married, and you've kept it well maintained, the frame dusted and the paint still vibrant. But you move past this display area into the heart of the bakery, the workroom where all the real magic happens. Here sits your most precious possession, your most important tool, the object that represents years of your life savings and ongoing maintenance, the oven. The oven dominates the back room like a small mountain of brick and clay. It's a traditional wood-fired oven, called a forno in Italian, built into the stone wall that backs onto an alley. The structure consists of a thick dome of bricks and clay rising about 4 feet high from a raised brick platform. The opening faces into the room, a dark mouth about 2 feet across. Above and behind the dome, a chimney rises through the building to vent smoke. The entire structure represents a significant investment. When your father built it 30 years ago, he spent nearly 100 florins on materials and the skilled mason's labor. That's more than a year's income for many craftsmen in Florence. The physics of this oven are simple but elegant. You light a wood fire inside the dome, and the heat from the burning wood soaks into the thick brick walls. Once the bricks are thoroughly heated, typically after 2 to 3 hours of burning, you rake out the fire and ashes. The trapped heat in the bricks then radiates back into the oven cavity, creating a consistent baking environment that gradually cools over the course of several hours. This means you bake in what's called a falling oven, starting with the hottest temperature right after removing the coals and gradually working with lower heat as time passes. But first, you need to build that fire. You walk to the wood storage area, a protected space under the stairs leading to the upper floor. Good wood is essential. You use mostly oak and beech, hardwoods that burn hot and long. Soft woods like pine burn too fast and leave a resinous smell that can taint the bread. You learned this lesson early in your apprenticeship when you tried to save money with cheap pine wood and produced loaves that tasted vaguely of pitch. The customers noticed immediately, and your father cuffed you hard enough to make your ears ring. You split the larger logs into manageable pieces yesterday afternoon, part of the endless cycle of preparation. Baking isn't just about the actual bread making, it's about maintaining your tools, sourcing materials, managing your supplies. A successful baker is equal parts craftsman and logistician. You carry an armload of wood to the oven. The floor of the oven is covered with a fine layer of ash from yesterday's fire. You'll clean this out more thoroughly later, but for now, you arrange small pieces of kindling in a loose pile toward the back of the oven floor. Getting the fire started is always the trickiest part. The stone is cold, and the morning dampness doesn't help. You return to your tinderbox and carefully transfer burning material to a small handful of dry grass and wood shavings you keep in a ceramic bowl. Once you have a good flame going, you carry this carefully to the oven and nestle it among the kindling. The tiny flames lick at the wood, Tentative at first, you blow gently, feeding oxygen to the infant fire, coaxing it to strengthen and spread. This is the part that requires patience. You add slightly larger sticks as the flames catch, building gradually. Add too much too fast, and you'll smother your fire. Go too slowly, and you'll waste precious time. After all these years, you've developed an instinct for it, a feel for exactly when the fire is ready for the next feeding. The flames grow, and you add more substantial pieces of wood. The fire begins to crackle and pop, and the first real heat starts radiating from the oven mouth. The cold room begins to feel slightly less frigid. You continue feeding the fire, pushing the burning wood gradually toward the center of the oven floor, building a strong bed of coals that will heat the dome evenly. As the fire establishes itself, you turn your attention to other preparations. On a sturdy wooden table in the center of the room sit several large earthenware crocks, each covered with damp linen cloths. These contain your lievito, your sourdough starter. This is perhaps your most valuable possession after the oven itself. The starter is a living thing, a culture of wild yeast and beneficial bacteria that you've maintained for years, feeding it regularly with flour and water. This same culture came from your father, who got it from his father, who got it from his. You're maintaining a living lineage that stretches back generations. You peel back the cloth from the largest crock and immediately smell the pleasantly sour, yeasty aroma that indicates a healthy, active starter. The surface shows the characteristic bubbly texture of active fermentation. You dip your finger in and taste it, checking the flavor. It's good, nicely tangy, but not overly acidic. This starter will leaven today's bread, transforming dense flour and water paste into loaves with open, airy texture and complex flavor. Yesterday afternoon, you mixed flour and water with a portion of the starter to create what's called a biga, a pre-fermentation that would work overnight. These bigas sit in smaller crocks, and you check each one now. They've risen beautifully, roughly doubling in volume, with a dome top and small bubbles visible on the surface. Perfect. The guild regulations are strict about what can and cannot go into bread. Common loaves must be made from wheat flour, water, salt, and natural leavening, nothing else. The regulations exist partly to ensure quality, but also to prevent bakers from adulterating their flour with cheaper substitutes. In lean years or times of grain shortage, some unscrupulous bakers have been known to mix sawdust, ground beans, or even chalk into their flour to stretch their supplies. The guild inspectors watch for this constantly, and the penalties for adulteration are severe. A baker caught mixing inferior ingredients can be fined heavily, pilloried in the public square, or even permanently expelled from the guild, which effectively ends his ability to practice the trade anywhere in the region. You maintain your reputation scrupulously. You buy your flour from Agnolo the miller, whose family has operated mills along the Arno for 3 generations. You pay a fair price, and in return, you get consistent quality. The wheat comes mostly from the countryside around Florence, from the farms and estates in the Tuscan hills. The grain is stone ground, which leaves some of the nutritious bran in the flour. For your finest white bread, you sift the flour multiple times through progressively finer linen screens, removing the bran until only the white endosperm remains. This refined flour produces lighter, softer bread that commands premium prices from wealthy customers. But most of your customers are ordinary Florentines who buy bread made from less refined flour. This is pane toscano, Tuscan bread, characterized by its saltless recipe, yes, saltless. This peculiarity dates back generations to a time when Pisa, Florence's coastal rival, blockaded salt shipments to the inland city. Rather than pay exorbitant prices for salt, Florentine bakers simply stopped using it. The practice stuck, becoming part of the local identity. Florentines grew to prefer their bread this way, insisting that salt-free bread better complements the region's savory foods, particularly the salted meats and richly flavored stews. You haul out the large wooden trough where you'll mix today's dough. This trough is nearly as old as the oven, a massive thing carved from a single piece of chestnut wood, smooth from decades of use. The wood has absorbed flour and water for so long that you swear you can smell bread emanating from it even when empty. The fire in the oven is roaring now, flames licking up toward the dome. You'll need to maintain this fire for at least another 2 hours before the oven is ready for baking. You add more substantial logs, building up the heat. The room is warming nicely, which helps. Cold dough is sluggish, reluctant to rise. The ambient warmth from the oven will help your dough develop properly. You measure out flour from the large sacks stored in your dry room, a small storage chamber with a thick door to keep out moisture and pests. Even with the cats, you periodically find evidence of mice in here, which drives you to fury. Every grain of flour lost to vermin is money literally eaten away. You measure by weight, using a set of brass scales, another guild requirement. Customers have the right to request their bread be weighed in their presence to ensure they're getting their full purchase worth. And inspectors sometimes conduct spot checks. Short-weighting bread is one of the most serious offenses a baker can commit. The flour goes into the trough, a mountain of pale powder forming in the wooden basin's depths. You create a well in the center and begin adding water, tepid water from the large ceramic jug you filled last night and left sitting out to reach room temperature. The amount of water matters tremendously. Too little, and your dough will be stiff and dry, producing dense bread. Too much, and your dough will be slack and impossible to shape, spreading instead of rising. You add the biga, breaking up the fermented dough and distributing it throughout the flour and water. Your hands plunge into the mixture, and you begin the rhythmic work of bringing it together. The flour gradually absorbs the water, transforming from dust into a shaggy mass. You press and fold, working the mixture until it starts to cohere. This is where the real labor begins. Once the dough comes together into a rough mass, you turn it out onto the wooden table and begin kneading in earnest. Your body moves into the familiar rhythm, pressing down and away with the heels of your hands, folding the dough back toward yourself, rotating it a quarter turn, pressing and folding again, over and over, hundreds of times, developing the gluten that will give the bread its structure. The physical demands of this work cannot be overstated. Kneading dough for large batches requires serious strength and stamina. Your forearms are corded with muscle developed over years of this labor. Your shoulders are broad and powerful. Baking is often romanticized as a gentle, homey craft, but the reality is that it's demanding, physical work that leaves you exhausted at day's end. As you knead, you can feel the dough transforming under your hands. It goes from rough and shaggy to smooth and elastic. When you press it, it springs back. When you stretch it gently, it forms a thin, translucent membrane before breaking. These are the signs you've developed the dough properly. The kneading takes nearly half an hour for this amount of dough, enough for about 40 loaves. Your back aches and your arms burn by the time you're finished, but the dough is perfect. You form it into a large ball and return it to the trough, covering it with damp linen. Now it needs to rest and rise, typically for about 2 hours, though the exact timing depends on the room temperature and the vigor of your starter. While the dough rests, you turn your attention back to the fire. The oven is getting seriously hot now. The bricks are glowing with stored heat, and when you cautiously reach a hand toward the opening, the heat is almost painful. You can hear the fire roaring inside, see the flames dancing across the dome's interior. This is what you need. This is the furnace that will transform flour and water into sustenance. You check the oven's temperature using the traditional method your father taught you. You toss a small handful of flour onto the oven floor. If it burns black immediately, the oven is too hot. If it slowly browns, it's about right. If it barely changes color, you need more heat. The flour you toss browns nicely in about 30 seconds. Perfect. The oven is reaching that ideal range of around 700 degrees at its hottest point. The morning is advancing now. You can see pale light beginning to show through the high window that faces east. Dawn is coming. and with it, the city will wake your apprentice, young Simone, should arrive within the hour. Simone is 14, the son of a woolworker. Apprenticed to you for 7 years in exchange for a modest fee his father paid to the guild. You provide his training, his midday meal, and a small allowance. In return, you get labor, and Simone gets an education in a skilled trade that, if he perseveres, will allow him to eventually join the guild as a journeyman and perhaps one day establish his own bakery. The fire has done its work. The oven dome glows with heat, and you judge it's time to begin the process of preparing for baking. Using a long-handled iron rake, you begin pulling the burning logs and hot coals toward the oven opening. This requires care. The heat is intense, and getting too close means risking serious burns. You've seen bakers with scarred hands and arms, permanent reminders of momentary carelessness around the oven. You rake the coals into a metal bucket, a process that takes several minutes and fills the room with heat and the acrid smell of wood smoke. Once most of the fire is removed, you use a wet mop made of rags tied to a long pole to sweep out the remaining ash and cool the oven floor slightly. The wet rags hiss and steam against the hot bricks. You work quickly, mopping the entire oven floor in smooth strokes, removing any debris that might burn onto the bottom of your loaves. Now the oven is ready. The heat trapped in the thick brick walls will maintain baking temperature for hours, gradually decreasing as you work through the morning's batches. The first loaves will bake in the hottest oven, the later ones in progressively cooler conditions. This is why you plan your baking order carefully, starting with breads that benefit from high heat and working toward those that prefer gentler conditions. The room is thoroughly warm now, almost uncomfortably so. The combination of the hot oven and your exertions has you sweating despite the October morning chill outside. You wipe your forehead with the back of your hand, leaving a streak of flour behind, and take a long drink from your flask of watered wine. The liquid is refreshing, cutting through the dust in your throat. Outside, you can hear the city beginning to stir. A cart rattles past on the street, probably a farmer bringing produce to market. Someone shouts a greeting. A dog barks. Florence is waking up, and thousands of people will soon be wanting their morning bread. The dough in the trough has been rising while you tended the fire, and you return to it now. When you pull back the linen cover, you're greeted with exactly what you hoped to see. The dough has roughly doubled in size, the surface rounded and smooth, with a few bubbles visible where gas from fermentation has collected. You press a finger gently into the dough. The indentation remains, but slowly fills back in. This is the perfect moment, when the yeast has produced enough gas to leaven the bread, but hasn't exhausted itself. The front door rattles and opens. Young Simone arrives, breathless from hurrying. He's a gangly youth, all elbows and knees, with the perpetually hungry look of a boy in the middle of a growth spurt. His face is flushed from the cold morning and the quick walk. "Sorry I'm late, Master Filippo," he pants, using your given name with the respectful title. "My mother needed help with ow." You wave away his explanation. He's not really late. You simply hold everyone to high standards, including punctuality. Never mind. Wash your hands thoroughly, and then come help with the shaping. We have a large order from the Tornabuoni household in addition to the regular baking. Simone rushes to the water basin and scrubs his hands with the lye soap you keep there. Cleanliness is another guild requirement, one you take seriously. You've heard horrifying stories from other cities where bakers work in filthy conditions, where rats nest in the grain stores and flies cover the bread. Not in Florence. The Arte dei Fornai maintains strict standards, and inspectors can arrive unannounced at any time to check not just your bread quality, but your general sanitation. Together, you begin the process of dividing and shaping the dough. You turn the massive ball out onto the floured table and use a knife to cut it into portions. Each portion must be weighed to ensure consistency. The guild mandates specific weights for different bread types. A standard loaf should weigh 1 pound, 14 ounces before baking. After baking and water loss, it will weigh close to 1 pound, 8 ounces. You've calibrated your portions so carefully over the years that you can usually eyeball the right amount, but you still weigh each piece to be certain. Remember what I taught you about shaping, you tell Simone as he watches you work. The goal is to create surface tension. We want a tight skin on the outside of the dough that will help it rise upward instead of spreading sideways. You demonstrate, taking a portion of dough and folding the edges underneath, rotating and folding, creating a smooth, taut surface. Your hands move with practiced efficiency. Simone tries to imitate your movements with his piece, but his loaf looks lumpy and uneven. Like this? He asks hopefully. Not quite. Here, watch again. You shape another loaf, narrating each movement. See how I'm pulling the dough tight underneath? That creates tension on the top surface, and I'm working quickly but gently. You don't want to deflate all the gas that's built up during rising, but you do need to create structure. The process is hypnotic, almost meditative once you fall into the rhythm. Shape a loaf, set it aside on a floured board. Shape another, set it aside. The pile of unshaped dough diminishes while the collection of shaped loaves grows. Simone gradually gets the hang of it, his loaves looking increasingly professional. For the tornabuoni order, you prepare special loaves using the finest flour. These are shaped into elegant rounds and will be slashed decoratively before baking to control how they expand in the oven's heat. Wealthy households expect their bread to look beautiful as well as taste good. You've heard that in the grand households, the presentation of food has become almost an art form, with elaborate displays at banquets and feast days. The shaped loaves need a final rise before baking, typically 30 to 45 minutes. You arrange them on long wooden boards called peels, the same tool depicted in paintings of Saint Honoratus. The peels will allow you to slide the loaves into and out of the oven without burning yourself or disturbing the other loaves already baking. While the loaves undergo their final proof, you and Simone prepare for the actual baking. You dust the peels lightly with flour to prevent sticking. You prepare your lame, a sharp blade attached to a handle which you'll use to score the tops of the loaves. These slashes aren't merely decorative, though they can be. They serve a critical function, providing weak points where the expanding dough can burst as it bakes. Without these cuts, loaves can split unpredictably, creating ugly, uneven breaks. Simone, bring me the smaller peels, you instruct. We'll start with the special order. These need to go in the hottest oven. The boy retrieves the shorter peels and carefully dusts them. You can see he's trying hard to be useful, to prove himself worthy of this apprenticeship. You remember your own apprentice years, the desperate desire to please, the fear of making mistakes. Your own master was harsher than you try to be, quick with a swat and sharp with criticism. You've tried to be more patient, though you still maintain firm standards. The loaves have risen nicely, puffy, and full of promise. You take your lame and begin scoring them. For the tornabuoni loaves, you create an intricate pattern of slashes, forming a wheat sheaf design. It's a bit of showing off, you admit to yourself, but wealthy patrons appreciate these touches. You've heard that Giovanni Tornabuoni, who manages the Medici Bank's Roman branch, is quite particular about the quality of his household purchases. A beautiful presentation might lead to more orders, and wealthy customers pay better and more reliably than ordinary folk. The regular loaves get simpler treatment, usually just 2 or 3 parallel slashes or a simple cross pattern. You work quickly now. The loaves are ready, the oven is at perfect temperature, and timing matters enormously in this phase of the work. Stand back, you warn Simone, and you approach the oven opening with the first peel loaded with loaves. The heat radiating from the opening is fierce. You can feel it on your face like the blast from a forge. You slide the peel deep into the oven and give it a practiced jerk that slides the loaves off onto the hot brick floor. You repeat this process with the other prepared loaves, working swiftly to get them all into the oven before the temperature drops too much from the open door. Finally, all the loaves are loaded. You use a heavy wooden door to partially close the oven opening, leaving just enough gap for moisture to escape. Some bakers like to seal the oven completely. You prefer allowing some ventilation, finding it produces a better crust. Now comes one of the hardest parts of baking: waiting. The loaves will take somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes to bake, depending on their size and the oven temperature. During this time, there's little to do but watch and wait, checking occasionally, resisting the urge to open the oven and peek, which would let out valuable heat. The smell begins almost immediately. It starts as a faint, yeasty aroma, then builds into the unmistakable scent of baking bread. This smell has permeated your life for so long that you barely notice it anymore, but you know what it means to customers. That aroma draws people like a beacon, impossible to resist. A properly baked loaf smells like comfort, like home, like everything good about food. You use this waiting period to clean and prepare for the next batch. The shaping table gets wiped down and refloured, the buckets and crocks get rinsed. You mix another batch of dough that will rise during the day for tomorrow's early baking. Baking is an endless cycle, always looking ahead to the next day, the next batch, the next customer. Simone sweeps the floor, pushing flour dust and debris toward the door. Every surface in a bakery seems to attract flour. It coats everything in a fine white film you've long since given up trying to keep perfectly clean. You simply aim for reasonably tidy and acceptably sanitary, which is honestly the best any baker can hope for. The light through the east window is growing stronger. The sun has risen somewhere beyond the buildings lining the narrow street, though it won't reach your bakery directly for another hour or so. The city sounds are growing louder. You can hear footsteps passing on the street outside, hear vendors beginning to cry their wares, hear church bells calling the faithful to morning prayers. And the smell of baking bread intensifies, filling every corner of the room, seeping out through cracks in the door and window shutters, announcing to the neighborhood that the baker is at work. You crack open the oven door and peer inside, squinting against the heat and brightness. The loaves have transformed. What went in as pale, soft dough has become golden brown bread. The crusts split beautifully along your carefully placed slashes. The special tornabuoni loaves look particularly magnificent, their wheat sheaf pattern opened into crisp, browned edges. Using the long peel, you carefully slide it under the first loaves and pull them from the oven. They emerge crackling softly, the sound bakers call singing, as the crust contracts and settles. You tip them onto a cooling rack, a wooden frame with slats that allows air to circulate around the loaves. This prevents condensation from collecting on the bottoms and making the crust soggy. "Beautiful," you murmur, mostly to yourself. After all these years, a perfectly baked loaf still brings you satisfaction. The color is even, the crust crisp but not burnt, the bottom properly browned. You knock on one with your knuckles. It sounds hollow, another sign of proper baking. While those cool, you load the next batch into the oven. The temperature has dropped slightly, which is fine. These loaves are larger and will benefit from the slower, gentler heat. You work efficiently now, sliding loaves in, positioning them carefully to ensure even baking. The oven can hold about 24 standard loaves at a time, and you'll go through several batches before the morning sales rush. As the second batch bakes, you hear footsteps outside and then a knock on the door. This will be Francesca, the widow who works as your shop assistant. She's a respectable woman in her 40s whose husband died 5 years ago, leaving her with 2 children to support. You pay her a small wage to manage the front counter during busy hours, handle customers, and keep track of sales. It's not traditional to employ a woman in this capacity, but Francesca needed work, you needed help, and she's proven herself capable and honest. "Good morning, Master Filippo," she says as she enters, her shawl pulled tight against the morning chill. "I can smell the bread from 2 streets away. The whole neighborhood will be knocking down your door soon." "Good morning, Francesca. Yes, we have a strong bake today. There's the special order for the Tornabuoni household, which you'll need to set aside. Their servant should collect it mid-morning. 20 loaves of the finest white bread, and don't let anyone else purchase them, no matter how much they offer." She nods, understanding. Wealthy households place orders and expect them to be fulfilled exactly as specified. Disappointing a powerful family like the Tornabuoni could mean losing their patronage, and such families often represent steady, lucrative business. Francesca moves to the front room and begins her morning routine. She opens the shutters, letting light stream in. She sweeps the floor. She arranges the serving counter, setting out the scales for weighing bread and the various baskets that will hold different bread types. She checks the supply of small cloth bags that customers can purchase if they didn't bring their own bread basket. The first casual customers begin arriving shortly after dawn. These are typically domestic servants from households too important or wealthy to have their own ovens, sent out to purchase fresh bread for their master's breakfast. They arrive in ones and twos, some carrying baskets, others with leather bags. "2 standard loaves, please," requests one young woman, probably a kitchen maid from a merchant's household. Francesca weighs out 2 loaves, confirms they meet the proper weight, and names the price. The transaction is swift. The woman pays with small copper coins and departs with her purchase wrapped in a clean cloth. A manservant from what sounds like a noble household is more particular. "I need bread for Lord Alberti's table. What do you have in your finest white bread?" You emerge from the back room, wiping flour from your hands. "I have several loaves of fine white bread, signore, baked this morning with flour sifted 3 times, very light, very tender, suitable for a noble table." The man examines the offered loaf carefully, as is his right. He breaks off a small piece from one corner and tastes it, checking the texture and flavor. You don't mind. Servants who purchase food for particular employers are judged by the quality of what they bring home. A bad purchase could mean punishment or dismissal. "Acceptable," he pronounces finally. "I'll take 4 loaves, and I'll be back later in the week for more, assuming the quality remains consistent." "You'll find my bread is always consistent, signore. That's a master baker's pride." The morning progresses, and the flow of customers increases steadily. You're baking continuously now, pulling finished loaves from the cooling oven and loading in fresh ones. Each batch bakes at a slightly lower temperature than the last as the oven gradually cools. This is actually ideal. The hottest baking produces the crispest crusts. The medium heat produces everyday loaves with good texture. The coolest baking, in the late morning, is perfect for softer breads and for the occasional sweet breads you make for feast days. The shop fills with conversation as customers meet and chat while waiting to be served. Buying bread is as much a social activity as a practical one. People exchange news and gossip. A woman mentions that her sister's husband secured an apprenticeship with the Wool Guild for their eldest son. Another woman complains about the price of olive oil this season. An old man grumbles about the morning's chill and predicts an early winter. You catch snippets of conversation about the larger world. Someone mentions Lorenzo de' Medici, the de facto ruler of Florence. Despite the city's republican government structure, Lorenzo has been investing heavily in the arts, they say, commissioning sculptures and paintings, hosting poets at his villa. There's also talk about tensions with Pope Sixtus in Rome, some political maneuvering involving banking contracts and territorial disputes. You don't follow politics too closely. Your concerns are more immediate. Flour supplies, firewood prices, guild dues, and making sure every loaf meets the exacting standards that keep customers coming back. Around mid-morning, just as you predicted, a servant wearing the Tornabuoni household livery arrives to collect the special order. Francesca has the 20 loaves wrapped and ready. The servant counts them carefully, inspects several for quality, and then pays. The price is good, nearly double what ordinary loaves fetch, and the servant adds a small additional coin as thanks for the excellent quality. These small tips add up over time, providing a modest cushion in your finances. Tell your household steward that Master Filippo is always ready to serve the Tornabuoni family, you say with a slight bow. The servant nods and departs, carefully balancing the large basket of bread. One unexpected customer arrives mid-morning. A guild inspector. You recognize him immediately, Ser Antonio, a former baker himself who now serves as one of the Arte dei Forni's quality inspectors. His appearance causes a small flutter of nervousness. Inspections can happen at any time without warning, and while you maintain high standards, there's always the worry that some small detail has been overlooked. "Good morning, Master Filippo," Ser Antonio says formally. "I trust business is well?" "Very well, Ser Antonio. How may I serve the guild today?" "A routine inspection, nothing more. If you would allow me to examine your weights and measures, and perhaps sample your current bake?" "Of course, please, come through to the workroom." You lead him to the back where Simone freezes mid-sweep, eyes wide with anxiety. Ser Antonio pays the boy no mind. He goes first to your scales, examining them carefully. He checks that the weights are properly marked and haven't been tampered with. He tests several measures, ensuring they conform to guild standards. Then he turns his attention to the bread itself, selecting a loaf from the morning's baking. He examines the crust, breaks the loaf open to inspect the crumb structure, and tastes a small piece thoughtfully. The wait while he deliberates feels interminable, though it's probably only 30 seconds. Finally, he nods. "Good work, Master Filippo. The texture is excellent, the color even, the weight proper. You maintain the guild's standards admirably." You feel your shoulders relax. "Thank you, Ser Antonio. I take pride in my craft." "As you should. One note, however, I noticed some flour dust accumulating in the corners near the front door. Perhaps a more thorough sweeping schedule would address this." "Yes, of course. I'll see to it immediately." You shoot a pointed look at Simone, who blushes and hurries to grab the broom. The inspector makes a note in his ledger book, then nods to you and departs. Once he's gone, you let out a long breath. These inspections are necessary. They maintain the guild's reputation, ensure all bakers meet minimum standards, and protect consumers from fraud and poor quality. But they're still stressful, a reminder that your entire livelihood depends on maintaining the guild's good graces. By late morning, the initial rush has slowed. Most households have secured their daily bread, and the shop is quieter. This is when working people start arriving, laborers and craftsmen who've been at their own jobs since dawn and are now looking for something to eat during their brief break. A stonemason arrives, his hands enclosed white with marble dust. He buys a simple loaf and a piece of cheese from the shop next door, then sits on the bench outside your bakery to eat. You see him tear into the bread with relish. Bread is fundamental to the Florentine diet, making up perhaps half of a common person's daily calorie intake. It's rarely eaten alone, but rather used to sop up soups, stews, and sauces, or accompanied by cheese, olive oil, or the occasional bit of meat or fish. A group of wool workers arrive together, loud and joking. They're covered in the lanolin and oils that come from working with raw wool, and they smell distinctive. They pool their money to buy several loaves, planning to share them with their lunch. You know these men work under harsh conditions. The wool industry dominates Florence's economy, but the workers themselves are paid little and have minimal rights. They're not allowed to form their own guild, kept under the strict control of the Wool Merchants Guild, the Arte della Lana. You're fortunate to have your own guild, your own trade, your own measure of independence. Francesca handles most of these transactions, freeing you to focus on the final batches of baking. The oven is noticeably cooler now, and you're using this last of the heat to bake some special items. You've made a small batch of sweet bread enriched with honey and spices, a luxury item that only wealthier customers can afford. You'll sell what you can today, and tomorrow you'll use any leftovers to make panzanella, the traditional Tuscan bread salad where stale bread is soaked, then mixed with tomatoes, onions, and herbs. Nothing goes to waste in a baker's shop. Everything has a use. By noon, you're pulling the final items from the oven. The last loaves are darker, almost too dark, baked in the waning heat. These will be sold at a slight discount as oven-tail bread, perfectly edible, but not as attractive as the earlier batches. Some customers prefer this darker bread, claiming it has more flavor. The morning's work is essentially complete. You've baked nearly 80 loaves, enough to meet the day's demand with a small surplus. Now comes the afternoon shift, a different sort of work, but no less important. After the morning's baking frenzy, the afternoon seems almost tranquil, though there's still much to be done. You take a brief break to eat, sitting at the work table with Simone and Francesca. Your wife has sent your midday meal with Francesca, bread, naturally, along with a thick bean soup flavored with olive oil and herbs, and some aged pecorino cheese. The soup is filling and warming, exactly what you need after hours of standing in the oven's heat. Master Filippo, Simone ventures between mouthfuls, when do you think I'll be ready to handle the oven on my own? You consider this carefully before answering. Simone has been with you for nearly 2 years now, and he's learned much, but managing the oven is perhaps the most critical skill a baker must master. When you can judge the oven's temperature by instinct, when you can feel in your bones when it's ready, when you can look at dough and know exactly how it will behave in the heat, that takes time, Simone. Years, not months. The boy looks disappointed but nods. I'll keep practicing. Good. Patience and persistence make a master baker. Impatience makes burned bread and wasted flour. After your meal, you turn your attention to one of the less glamorous but absolutely essential aspects of running a bakery, managing your supplies and finances. You pull out your ledger book, a thick volume where you record every transaction, every purchase, every sale. The ability to read and write isn't universal among craftsmen, but you are fortunate your father insisted you learn, paying a local priest to teach you basic literacy and arithmetic. You've come to understand this as one of your greatest assets, being able to keep accurate records, to calculate costs and profits, to maintain proper accounts. This allows you to run your bakery as a true business rather than simply hoping things work out. You review yesterday's sales, calculating your income against your expenses. Flour is your largest cost, followed by firewood, then your various other expenses, guild dues, rent for the storage rooms, wages for Francesca and Simone's small allowance, maintenance on the oven and tools, and the occasional replacement of worn-out equipment. The numbers tell a story of modest prosperity. You're not wealthy, not by any means, but you're stable. You earn enough to feed your family well, to keep them housed and clothed appropriately for your station. You've even managed to save a small amount, kept in a locked box, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. This savings represents security, the cushion that would allow you to weather a bad month or an unexpected expense. While you work on your accounts, Francesca minds the shop. Afternoon customers are fewer but steady. Some households send servants for fresh bread for the evening meal. A few customers arrive looking for day-old bread at reduced prices, and you're happy to oblige. Yesterday's bread, while not as desirable as fresh, is still perfectly good, and selling it prevents waste. Your contemplation of the ledger is interrupted by a knock, and another guild representative enters, this time not an inspector, but the guild secretary, Ser Paolo. He's carrying a leather satchel and wears the serious expression of a man conducting official business. Master Filippo, he greets you formally. Forgive the interruption. I'm making rounds to remind all guild members that dues are payable by week's end, and to inform you that there will be a guild assembly next Sunday after Mass to discuss the recent grain price increases. Of course, Ser Paolo, I have my dues prepared. You retrieve a small leather pouch from your locked box and count out the required silver coins. Guild dues are a significant expense, roughly equivalent to a week's profit, but they're non-negotiable. The dues fund the guild's various activities, maintaining the guild hall, compensating guild officials, lobbying the city government, enforcing quality standards, and providing some modest support to guild members who fall on hard times due to illness or injury. Ser Paolo counts the coins carefully, makes a notation in his ledger, and provides you with a receipt. Very good. And you'll attend the assembly? I will. These grain prices concern me greatly. If they continue rising, I'll need to either increase my bread prices or accept lower profits. neither option is attractive. Indeed, the Guild Council is negotiating with the grain merchants, trying to reach some accommodation. We'll discuss the options at the assembly. He pauses, then adds, the Guild is also considering a petition to the Signoria regarding regulation of the grain market. Too much speculation is driving up prices unnecessarily. This is the political role that guilds play in Florence's governance. While the city is theoretically a republic, practical power rests largely with the guild system. The major guilds, particularly the cloth merchants, bankers, and wool merchants, wield enormous influence. The minor guilds, including yours, have less power, but still a voice. Guild representatives sit on various councils and committees, advocate for their members' interests, and participate in the complex web of Florentine politics. After Sir Paolo departs, you turn your attention to another critical afternoon task, preparing for tomorrow. You check your flour supply in the storage room. You're running lower than you'd like, so you make a note to visit Agnolo the miller tomorrow afternoon to arrange for another delivery. You inspect your firewood stack, adequate for now, but you'll need more within the week. You check your sourdough starter, feeding it with flour and water to keep it active and healthy. Simone helps you split more firewood for tomorrow's oven firing. This is hard work, swinging the heavy axe to split oak logs into manageable pieces. The boy is developing muscles from this labor, slowly transforming from a gangly youth into a young man. You remember your own transformation during your apprentice years, how the physical demands of the trade reshaped your body. As you work, a wealthier customer arrives, a middle-aged woman dressed in fine wool with a servant in attendance. You recognize her as the wife of a successful silk merchant, one of the major guilds. She's not here for ordinary bread. Master Filippo, she says, her tone friendly but businesslike, my husband is hosting a small banquet in 3 days' time. I'll need specialty breads. Can you prepare sweetbreads with raisins and spiced breads? Perhaps 20 loaves total delivered to our home the morning of the banquet? This is exactly the kind of order you love to receive. It's prestigious, it pays well, and it showcases your skills beyond everyday loaves. Of course, Madonna, I can prepare an assortment for you. In addition to raisin breads, might I suggest some rolls flavored with rosemary and olive oil? They pair beautifully with roasted meats. Her face brightens. Yes, excellent idea. Please include those. Here, I'll pay half now and the balance upon delivery. She produces a small purse and counts out silver coins, a generous amount that represents several days' worth of regular sales. You bow slightly. Thank you, Madonna. Your bread will be perfect, I assure you. After she leaves, you make careful notes about the order in your ledger. Special orders require planning. You'll need to obtain raisins from the spice merchant, probably at the market in Piazza della Signoria. You'll need extra honey for the sweet breads. The rosemary you can get from Francesca, who keeps a small herb garden. This order will mean extra work, but the payment makes it worthwhile. The afternoon continues with these various tasks. You repair a crack in one of your proofing baskets, weaving fresh willow withes to replace broken ones. You scrub the mixing trough thoroughly, removing built-up dough residue. You organize your tools, ensuring everything is clean and properly stored. A baker's work is never truly done. There's always maintenance, always preparation, always something that needs attention. Around mid-afternoon, your eldest son Paolo arrives from school. Education for common children in Florence is more available than in many places, particularly for boys. Paolo attends one of the city's abacus schools, where he's learning reading, writing, and practical mathematics. The education isn't free, costing you a few soldi per month, but you consider it essential. A baker needs to read contracts, calculate costs, maintain accurate ledgers. Besides, you harbor a small hope that Paolo might rise higher than just following in your footsteps. Perhaps he could become a notary or a merchant, joining one of the major guilds. It's an ambitious dream, but not impossible. The guild system allows for social mobility if one has skill, luck, and persistence.
How was school today? You ask as Paolo enters the bakery. Master Leonardo taught us about fractions, the boy reports. How to divide quantities into equal parts. He said it's essential for commerce.
He's absolutely right. Here, let me show you how I use fractions every day. You bring him to your measuring table and demonstrate how you calculate flour quantities for different batch sizes, how you adjust recipes, how you figure costs per loaf. The boy watches attentively, and you can see him mentally working through the calculations. This is the future, you think. Paolo will take over this bakery someday, or establish his own. Perhaps Simone, if he completes his apprenticeship successfully, will become your journeyman and eventually a fellow guild member. The cycle continues, generation after generation, each teaching the next, preserving the knowledge and skills that keep Florence fed. As the afternoon wanes toward evening, you begin the process of mixing dough for tomorrow's baking. This dough will rest overnight, fermenting slowly with the sourdough starter, developing the complex flavors that distinguish good bread from merely adequate bread. You follow the same process as this morning: flour, water, starter, mixing, kneading, forming into a mass that will rest in the trough overnight. Your hands move through these familiar motions while your mind wanders. You think about the special order for the banquet. You mentally calculate whether you'll need to purchase more flour before the weekends. You worry briefly about the rising grain prices and what that might mean for your business. You remember that next week is Saint Honoratus's feast day, and you'll want to attend Mass and perhaps make a small offering at the saint's altar, asking for his continued blessing on your work. The light is fading from the windows. The day is not over quite yet, but the afternoon's work is largely complete. Francesca has closed the front shutters and swept the shop. Simone has finished his assigned tasks and is preparing to head home to his family. You'll remain a bit longer, tending to final details, but the hardest work is behind you. As the sun begins its descent behind Florence's rooftops, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, you finally close and bar the bakery door. The day's work, while not quite finished, has reached a natural pause. Your body aches in the familiar ways, shoulders stiff from kneading, lower back sore from bending over the oven, hands rough and cracked from flour and heat. But it's the satisfied ache of honest labor, and you've known this feeling so long it's almost comfortable. You take a final walk through the bakery, checking everything with the practiced eye of someone who's done this thousands of times. The oven is cooling, its bricks still holding warmth that will dissipate through the night. You've banked some coals in an iron pot, covering them with ash to preserve them until morning. If they hold through the night, you'll have an easier time starting tomorrow's fire. The dough for tomorrow rests in its trough, covered with damp linen. The floors are swept, the tools cleaned and stored, the mixing table wiped down.
Everything is ready for tomorrow's cycle to begin again.
The walk home takes only a few minutes. The streets are busy with people finishing their day's work, heading home to their families. You pass the blacksmith shop, where Marco is dousing his forge for the night, the hiss of water on hot metal audible from the street. You pass a group of wool workers trudging home, their clothes stained with dyes and oils. You nod to familiar faces, exchange brief greetings with neighbors. At your home, the smell of cooking greets you even before you open the door. Caterina has prepared the evening meal, and the aroma of onions and beans simmering in olive oil makes your stomach rumble. You suddenly realize how hungry you are, despite your midday meal. The physical demands of baking burn through food quickly.
Papa!
Young Maria and Giovanni rush to greet you as you enter. You scoop them both up in your strong arms, ignoring your tired muscles, and they giggle as you spin them around. These moments, these simple domestic joys, make all the hard work worthwhile. Caterina emerges from the cooking area, wiping her hands on her apron. She's a capable woman, your wife, managing the household with the same efficiency you bring to the bakery. While you earn the money, she manages everything else, raising the children, maintaining the home,
stretching your income to cover necessities, preserving food for winter, spinning wool to make clothing. A household in Florence is a partnership with clearly defined roles for husband and wife, and you recognize how fortunate you are in your marriage. "How was the day?" she asks, the same question she asks every evening. "Good. We received a special order for a banquet. 20 loaves of fancy breads, good payment. But Ser Paolo came around about guild dues and to warn that grain prices are still rising. We may have difficult months ahead." She nods, understanding the implications. "We'll manage. We always do. Come, wash and sit. Supper is ready." You wash your hands and face at the basin, scrubbing away the flour that seems to coat every part of you. The water turns cloudy white with suspended flour particles. You dry with a linen cloth and join your family at the table. The evening meal is simple but satisfying. Bean soup thickened with bread, a salad of wild greens dressed with olive oil and vinegar, a bit of salted pork for flavor, and of course, more bread wine mixed with water to drink. This is how ordinary Florentines eat. Simple foods stretched through skill and seasoning to provide adequate nourishment. As you eat, Paolo talks excitedly about his lessons. Maria shares some bit of neighborhood gossip she heard from friends. Little Giovanni tries to tell a story but gets confused halfway through, and everyone laughs gently. These dinner conversations are precious, the family coming together at day's end. After supper, there are evening prayers to attend to. You gather before the household altar, and together you recite the Pater Noster and Ave Maria, the prayers that structure Christian life. You add a personal prayer thanking God for the day's blessings and asking for protection through the night. Faith is woven through every aspect of life in Renaissance Florence, not as separate from daily concerns, but integrated with them. You pray for your business, for your family's health, for the guild's prosperity, for Florence's continued success. Caterina settles the younger children into bed, and you hear her softly singing a lullaby, the same songs her mother sang to her. Paolo stays up a bit longer, practicing his letters by candlelight, copying passages from a book borrowed from his schoolmaster. You sit near the small fire that provides the room's warmth, allowing your body to finally rest. You think about the day, reviewing decisions made and considering tomorrow's challenges. The special order for the banquet weighs on your mind, not with worry exactly, but with the conscientiousness that characterizes your approach to work. You'll need to ensure the raisins are of good quality. The sweetbreads need to be baked at just the right temperature to prevent the honey from burning. You mentally plan the timing, calculating when to start preparations so everything will be ready for delivery. Your thoughts drift to larger concerns. The rising grain prices trouble you, as they trouble all bakers. If prices continue to climb, you'll face an impossible choice: raise your bread prices and risk losing customers, or maintain prices and watch your profits evaporate. The guild will try to negotiate, but ultimately, bakers are at the mercy of forces beyond their control: weather, harvests, grain merchants' speculation, political factors affecting trade routes. But you also recognize your privileged position. You have a trade, a skill that's always in demand. You're a guild member with legal protections and political representation. You own your own bakery, inherited from your father, which means you're not paying rent to a landlord. Many Florentines have far less security, particularly the thousands of wool workers who labor without guild membership, subject to harsh discipline and uncertain employment. Caterina joins you by the fire after getting the children settled. She brings her spinning, always working even while resting, turning wool into yarn that will eventually become clothing or be sold for a bit of extra income. The rhythmic sound of the spinning wheel is soothing, a domestic music that's been part of human life for millennia. "Did you hear about the Donati family?" she asks, referring to neighbors who live 3 streets over. Their eldest daughter is to be married to a carpenter's son. The dowry negotiations took months, but they've finally reached agreement. You half listen as she shares the neighborhood news, the small stories that make up the texture of community life, Who's getting married, who's sick, who's prospered, who's fallen on hard times. These connections matter. Florence is organized in overlapping communities: family, neighborhood, parish, guild, city. Each layer provides support and structure, binding individuals into a larger social fabric. As the evening deepens toward night, exhaustion finally catches up with you fully. Your eyelids grow heavy, and even the fire's warmth can't keep you fully awake. Tomorrow will come early, as it always does, with another round of firing the oven, mixing dough, serving customers, managing the endless details that keep a bakery running. Caterina notices your nodding head and smiles. Go to bed, Filippo. Morning will arrive whether you're ready or not. You don't argue. You perform your final evening ritual, checking that the door is barred, that the fire is safely banked, that everything is secure for the night. Then you climb into bed beside your wife, pulling the wool blankets up against the October chill. Your body relaxes into the straw mattress, muscles finally releasing the tension they've held all day. You say a final brief prayer, asking St. Honoratus to watch over the bakery through the night, to keep the starter healthy and the rats away from the grain. Then, within moments of closing your eyes, you fall into deep, dreamless sleep. The sleep of a man who works hard, provides for his family, takes pride in his craft, and will wake before dawn to do it all again. Your life as a baker in Renaissance Florence represents something larger than just one man making bread. You're part of a complex economic and social system that has evolved over centuries, a system that's helped make Florence one of the wealthiest and most influential cities in Europe. The guild system, which defines your professional life, emerged in the medieval period as craftsmen and merchants sought to organize their trades, protect their interests, and maintain quality standards. By the Renaissance, Florence's guilds had become far more than simple trade associations. They'd evolved into powerful political and economic institutions that collectively governed the city. The Arte dei Forni, your baker's guild, is one of the 14 minor guilds. You don't have the prestige or wealth of the 7 major guilds, those associations of international cloth merchants, bankers, judges, and silk dealers who form Florence's ruling elite. But your guild still matters. Bakers provide an essential service. Every person in Florence eats bread daily, regardless of their social status. This gives your guild leverage and influence that transcends its minor designation. The regulations your guild enforces serve multiple purposes. On the surface, they're about maintaining quality and preventing fraud. No baker can mix inferior ingredients into his flour. No baker can short-weight his loaves. No baker can operate without guild membership. These rules protect consumers and ensure that all guild members compete on a relatively level playing field. But the regulations also serve to limit competition and protect guild members' livelihoods. The guild controls how many new bakers can enter the trade each year by limiting the number of apprenticeships and setting high entry fees. This keeps the supply of bakers relatively stable, preventing the market from becoming oversaturated and driving down everyone's income. Your position in Florentine society is complex. You're not wealthy, but you're not poor. You're not noble, but you're not a common laborer either. You occupy a middle position, what historians might call the middling sort. You own property, you can vote in guild assemblies, you have legal protections that many people lack. Your children have opportunities for education and advancement. This middle position is actually characteristic of Renaissance Florence more broadly. Unlike many medieval societies rigidly divided between nobles and peasants, Florence has developed a large middle class of skilled tradesmen, merchants, and professionals. This class has become the engine of the city's prosperity and the foundation of its political system. The guild's quality regulations, which sometimes seem burdensome, have actually contributed to Florence's reputation for excellence. Florentine cloth, Florentine leather, Florentine metalwork, and yes, Florentine bread are all known throughout Europe for their quality. This reputation attracts customers and enables premium pricing, benefiting everyone in the trade.
Your bakery sits in a city that's experiencing an extraordinary cultural flowering. While you're focused on the practical work of making bread, around you, artists, scholars, and thinkers are creating works that will be remembered for centuries. Brunelleschi has completed the magnificent dome on the Duomo, a technological marvel that dominates the skyline. Leonardo da Vinci is somewhere in the city, painting and inventing. Michelangelo is a young man just beginning his career. The Medici family is patronizing an incredible outpouring of art and learning. You're aware of this cultural activity, though it doesn't directly touch your daily life. You've seen the great buildings being constructed, the churches adorned with new frescoes, the statues being erected in public squares on feast days. You participate in the elaborate public processions and celebrations that are part of Florentine civic life. You take pride in your city's achievements, even if you don't fully understand the intellectual and artistic movements driving them. The bread you make connects you to this larger Renaissance culture in subtle ways. The wealthy households you supply, the ones ordering special breads for their banquets, are often the same families commissioning paintings and sculptures. The feasts they host bring together the artists, scholars, and political leaders who are shaping Renaissance thought. Your bread is there on those tables, a humble but essential part of the scene. Moreover, the economic prosperity that enables Florence's cultural flowering rests on the work of people like you. Cities need to eat, and feeding them requires a vast infrastructure of bakers, millers, farmers, merchants, and transport workers. The surplus wealth that pays for art comes from trade and manufacturing, but it also comes from the countless small transactions happening every day in shops like yours. Your literacy, your numerical skills, your practice of keeping detailed records, these make you part of the broader Renaissance emphasis on education and rationality. The abacus schools where your son studies are teaching practical mathematics that will enable the next generation to engage in commerce more effectively. This spread of education and numeracy is helping to create a more sophisticated, rationalized economy. The guild system itself, with its emphasis on quality, regulation, and documented standards, represents a kind of proto-modern approach to economic organization. While it's not capitalism in the modern sense, it's also not the feudal system of earlier medieval times. It's something in between, a regulated market economy that balances individual initiative with collective organization. Your daily routine, rising before dawn and working long hours, reflects a work ethic that's becoming increasingly characteristic of Renaissance urban life. The seasonal rhythms that governed agricultural societies have given way to a more constant year-round pattern of labor. You work 6 days a week every week, with breaks only for Sundays and major feast days. This represents a different relationship with time and work than existed in earlier eras. The material culture of your bakery, the tools you use, and the building you work in reflects centuries of accumulated knowledge and gradual improvement. Your oven represents the culmination of generations of experimentation with brick construction and heat management. Your wooden tools, your measuring devices, your storage containers, all have been refined over time to serve their purposes effectively. You're the beneficiary of this accumulated wisdom, even as you contribute your own incremental improvements and pass them on to the next generation. The food you produce, particularly the Tuscan tradition of making bread without salt, represents a local adaptation that's become part of regional identity. These local variations, found across Italy and Europe, create a rich diversity of culinary traditions. The Renaissance isn't just about high art and intellectual thought. It's also about the everyday practices that define how people live, eat, and organize their communities. Your position in the guild system, with its mixture of economic regulation, political participation, and social welfare functions, shows how Renaissance society was creating institutions to manage complex urban life. The guilds aren't perfect. They can be exclusionary and self-serving, but they also provide a framework for skilled workers to protect their interests
and maintain professional standards in ways that purely unregulated markets wouldn't allow. As you sleep tonight, you're part of a world in transition. The medieval period is giving way to something new, though no one living through it would use the term Renaissance to describe their own time. You're simply living your life, practicing your trade, raising your family, participating in your guild and your community. But collectively, the choices and actions of people like you are creating the economic, social, and cultural patterns that will define this era in retrospect. The bread you bake each morning feeds not just bodies, but also a civilization that's reaching new heights of achievement. And that humble loaf, gold-encrusted and fragrant, carries within it thousands of years of human ingenuity, from the first domestication of wheat to the sophisticated guild systems of Renaissance Florence. And now, as our day draws to a close in Renaissance Florence, you're deep in that unconscious sleep that comes from honest labor. Tomorrow, before the stars have faded from the sky, you'll wake and begin the cycle again. The oven will be fired, the dough will be kneaded, the bread will be baked, and the people of Florence will line up outside your door, drawn by that irresistible aroma that has summoned humanity to the baker's shop for thousands of years. What strikes me most about this day we've spent together is how the fundamental rhythms of work, family, community, and faith haven't changed as much as we might think. The technology differs, certainly. You don't have electric ovens or commercial yeast or digital thermometers. But the core of the work, the skill and knowledge required, the pride in craft, the satisfaction of making something essential with your own hands, these remain constant across the centuries. The baker's craft connects past and present in profound ways. Every time we smell fresh bread baking, we're experiencing something that humans have known for millennia. Every time we break bread with family or friends, we're participating in a ritual that transcends any particular era or culture. The guilds that organize your professional life may seem quaint or outdated, but the impulse behind them, the desire of workers to maintain standards, protect their livelihoods, and have some voice in their working conditions, that impulse remains very much alive in modern labor organizations and professional associations. The balance you strike between individual initiative and community obligation, between competition and cooperation, between tradition and adaptation, these are still the fundamental challenges that craftspeople and small business owners face today. The context changes, but the underlying questions persist. And perhaps most importantly, your life demonstrates that history isn't just made by princes and popes, artists and intellectuals. It's made by ordinary people doing ordinary work, by bakers and blacksmiths and woolworkers and countless others whose names aren't recorded in history books, but whose labor made possible everything else that happened in their time. Thank you for spending this day with me in Renaissance Florence, for experiencing the heat of the oven, the weight of the dough, the rhythm of a baker's work. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like this video. And if you want more deep dives into historical daily life, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and let me know what aspects of this day surprised you, or what other historical periods or occupations you'd like to explore. I'm always curious to hear what resonates with you all. Until next time, sleep well, and may your own dreams be as peaceful as our baker's rest after a long day's honest work. Thank you, and good night.